Hey everybody, welcome to day 71 of the 90-day video challenge, stepping into 2020 on the right foot. I'm so thankful that you're here, and I'm wondering why my wife laughs at me every time I do the intro.
Well, I feel like you learned yesterday not to count down from 10.
Well, I've never counted down from 10 before, and
you did it yesterday. And I stole your intro.
I said you worked up the courage to be a thief. Funny how that works. Day 71. So we got out this evening, had a little date night. Whoop, whoop. Went to Arby's. First class.
I love Arby's. I love the roast beef, and I'm not a meat person, so I like to go there and have a roast beef sandwich, and the kids, they hate Arby's. So the only time I get Arby's is on a date night.
Yeah, and then we went and did a little Christmas shopping. So got some of that out of the way, and hopefully we'll be done before too long with that. But it was a good night. I got a run in.
Yeah, you did.
So.
And you came back and you said, I felt good.
I did. It felt good. Got to listen to Levi Lusko's sermon from Sunday, December the 8th. If you get a chance to take a listen, you should do that. Talks about leaving a legacy. So, very good. Today is also day 33 of the 40-day prayer challenge. And today's topic is prayer covering. And the verse comes from Exodus chapter 17, verse 12. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side and one on the other. So what is prayer covering? What do you think that's meaning?
Well, it's interceding for people that are interceding for you, pretty much. It's people that you pray with, whether it's just a partner praying or if it's a prayer circle, if you have a group of women or a group of men that you meet with and you share what it is that you're praying about. It is literally, it's holding you up whenever you can't do it anymore.
Okay. He starts off talking about whenever he first started in D.C., how he felt like he was alone and didn't have a whole lot of interaction with other churches in the area. And I mean, I can certainly understand that. You're starting a new thing and you wonder what people may or may not think about you, so you just sort of stay away. And
it's not, the way that I read it wasn't even that he was, that it was by chance that he didn't have relationships. He was intentionally not making relationships with other pastors around. Yeah.
That's what he says. He was so busy trying to build the church that he forfeited potential friendships.
Yep. And that can tend to be a pride thing. You can say, I can do this on my own. I don't need other people to help me. If I'm vulnerable and I tell other people what I'm struggling with, then they're going to think poorly of me. And it's a pride thing.
And, maybe it was pride with Mark, maybe it wasn't. He talks about how the Lord convicted him of the fact that it was easier for him to pray for a church that was 4 states away rather than one that was 4 blocks away. And so he says he began to pray for area churches. He invested in other church plants. And he said he started inviting local pastors to share their stories and their hearts with his team during staff devotions. And then he goes on to say that he firmly believes that we need many different kinds of churches because there are many different kinds of people. And as long as the church is preaching the gospel, it's all for one and one for all. And we certainly need more of that. But I think the meaning behind it is that he has discovered that there is strength in numbers. You can learn as much from somebody that you, I don't want to say competition. It's not really a competition, but it's somebody that you're sort of doing the same thing that they're doing, but just a little bit different. So it doesn't have to be a competition. It can be an encouragement and a time to build each other up. So he goes on and finishes talking about how that has impacted his church. He talks about interceding in prayer. he uses the story of Moses praying over the battle that Joshua was involved in with the Amalekites, I believe. And God told Moses, as long as you hold your hands up, the Israelites will be successful. And so Moses stood with his arms raised as long as he could, and as they started to come down, the Israelites began to lose. And so Aaron and Hur came over and held his hands up while the Israelites finished the battle. And they were successful that day because Moses had two friends jump in and hold his arms up and make sure that he was able to get through this time that he wouldn't have been able to hold his hands up otherwise. And so he says, if we're going to intercede for others, we had better be sure that others are interceding for us. We need a prayer covering, especially when we enter an intense season of prayer and fasting. When we hit our knees, we pick a fight with the enemy, and the enemy will fight back. Do you have a prayer circle or anybody that intercedes with you?
Yeah, my friend Gina. So we intercede for each other.
Mm-hmm. And how have you seen that work?
Oh, I have seen a request for a clear sign that a season was over or to continue to press through. 24 hours later, I've seen, here's the answer. And I would say that, she has actually sent us both text messages a couple of times and said, can you guys pray for me about this? And it's being able, and that's where it's kind of like, okay, you can intercede for somebody, but then you don't want to share their secondhand story because you don't know if they want you to share their story or if, because you've got to see it kind of like Aaron and Hur. That was until they took the point of holding up the arms, it was a secondhand story for them. But as soon as they held up Moses' arms, it became their firsthand account of what God did. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay. He says spiritual warfare can be scary and lonely, but I've always been strangely encouraged when I encounter increased spiritual opposition or oppression. It means I'm doing something right. It means I'm riling up the enemy. It means I'm inching closer to breakthrough. And just when the fighting gets fiercest, I know that God is getting ready to go to battle for me. And that's, again, when we feel alone, whenever we get to that point, that's when we need people to intercede for us and with us to get through those times. Because we're not alone. God is with us. And it takes sometimes, the encouragement and accountability of your closest friends and intercessors to keep you going.
Mm-hmm. And we have had some intercessory prayers in our Sunday night group, I would say, for different things, different health things with Allison and job situations and decisions that we needed to hear clearly what God was wanting us to do. So,
right. It says here, intercession is spiritual warfare. It's not for the faint or the feeble. By definition, praying hard is hard. So, ultimately, I think that whenever you begin intercessory type prayers, you really ramp up the Satan's attack on what it is that you're doing. But you're also doubling up on the request for God to intervene.
Yeah. And he says, the victory is won with knees bent in prayer and hands raised in worship to God.
Mm-hmm. He goes on and talks a little bit more about the Israelite battle.
So whenever he starts talking about footnotes, so what did you think about Daniel Nash? I mean, that was pretty impressive.
The guy that went early?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that takes a lot of courage. I mean, and the thing that's interesting about this, he says that Daniel Nash quit his pastorate to devote himself to full-time intercession. He went ahead of the preacher. This was
Charles Finney.
the years and decades before Billy Graham and his type revivals, but that's basically what this was a traveling tent revival kind of thing. And Daniel Nash would go early, and he would pray over the city, he would pray over the people, and while the revival was going on, he would pray for the revival itself. It doesn't say anything about how he made his living. It doesn't say anything about whether he had a family to support or anything like that. Is an interesting part of it for me. But he said, this is important enough. God has called me to do it, so this is what I'm going to do. And he did it. So, I mean, that's an example of being available to step out when God calls.
Yep. And it says, prayer is the pen that writes history. Don't worry about making headlines. Focus on the footnotes. And if you focus on the footnotes, God will write the headlines.
Yeah. We have to be willing to do the little things.
Well, and we've talked about this before. We have no idea what this piece of our story is. You can't really tell until you have hindsight. And sometimes, even with hindsight, you can't tell. And so, we talk about you can't really tell if something's good or bad whenever you're going through it. You have to look at it through the perspective of what God has done with it.
Mm-hmm. So. What was the thought for the day?
If you intercede for others, make sure that others are interceding for you.
So this sort of struck me this morning as I was reading that and praying about it and meditating on it. I thought, I need to make sure that there are those people around me that are interceding for me. I know that you have your friend that you do that with, and I don't really have somebody that I could say is interceding on my behalf. And so I need to make sure that I foster relationships that will provide that. So that's something I'm praying about and seeking at this point.
That's awesome. That would be exciting to see. Are you ready for day 34?
What's 34?
It's raise up a remnant.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm excited to see what it is because, in the Bible all the way along, it says that God will never completely take us out, that he's always going to leave a remnant.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. We're going to be raising a remnant. I don't know if that's like Raise a Hallelujah. You know that song?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Tomorrow, day 72, we're going to be raising a remnant. We're going to be doing the old-fashioned country Christmas.
We should probably come to them from the old-fashioned country Christmas.
We could maybe do that. Down there, our whole city gets together and we do a whole thing. All the kids, all the kids in elementary school and middle school, they sing and do a little choir deal. And then there's a community choir, and then the band plays, and there's like a nativity scene, and there's a chili cook-off that supports some missions at a local church, and Santa Claus shows up. It's pretty cool. And the whole city comes out. It's not like it's New York City or anything, but for our small community, it's a lot of fun. And so I'm looking forward to going and enjoying that tomorrow evening.
Yep, it'll be awesome. It'll be cold, but it'll be awesome.
It'll be cold. They're talking about a chance of snow here on Monday.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, all right, tomorrow, day 72, we'll be back from the old-fashioned country Christmas. I think that's what it's called. Mm-hmm. I'm not real sure, but we'll find out. We'll see you guys tomorrow, day 72.